This is CBC Here and Now.
Helped bring down 6 budgets for 6 different premiers. He eats budgets for breakfast and knows our books inside out.
A prominent Liberal businessman comes out in favor of the Liberal leadership underdog. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. We also have these stories.
This province's Minister of Education says students will be back in classrooms at schools like this come September.
It doesn't involve modular classrooms, doesn't involve splitting classrooms in terms of size.
We'll have reaction from the NLTA coming up on Here and Now.
A beautiful evening tonight, but how long is this nice weather going to last? I'll have all the details.
That's all just ahead, but we begin tonight with a look at a service that's been helping children for decades. Kids Help Phone says it's seen a big jump in calls since families started isolating because of COVID-19. Not only have children been exposed to a global pandemic, but lingering family issues haven't gone away. As Here and Now's Ariana Kelland reports, it's what advocates feared and expected.
To say Kids Help Phone has been busy would be an understatement. They saw a 350% surge in usage during the beginning of the pandemic. Now that things have leveled out, it's still up over 110% from this time last year. More staff hired, volunteer numbers maxed out.
Especially here in Newfoundland, Labrador, 2 of the still most frequently discussed topics with us as of last week are grief and isolation. And then, of course, on the East Coast here, we've had a couple of instances that have resulted in conversations of grief. Certainly what happened in St. Lawrence, and then the tragedy in Nova Scotia always hits home.
Teens reporting self-harm and suicidal thoughts have also gone up in this province. What's more, 77% of kids who took part in a survey after their conversation say they wouldn't have reached out to anyone else if they couldn't talk to Kids Help Phone.
There was a noted increase in particularly emotional and sexual abuse reports.
All kids deserve to be happy, healthy, and safe.
Miles for Smiles founder Bev Moore-Davis says we shouldn't be fooled by a small increase. The number of phone calls doesn't equal all accounts of abuse.
We've heard from some children directly that they live in fear. They don't want to be taken by CSSD, and they know some family or friends who have had, unfortunately, unpleasant experiences.
When Bev Moore-Davis realized children would be home from school all day, her heart sank. No watchful eyes, no safe haven. As a survivor herself, she knows what it means to be trapped with your abuser.
I had a very unsettling feeling about it, and I didn't feel that anybody was doing anything. I was disappointed that I wasn't seeing anything from government.
So she took the initiative with this video. It's meant to educate, to remind children they're not alone. Both Moore-Davis and Cardwell say this pandemic has shown us more than ever before that adults have a big role to play. Kids Help Phone has learned that kids are aware of what's happening around them and that they look to adults to learn how to cope. If that adult is the problem, Moore-Davis says it's incumbent on all of us to step in and help. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
One of the safe spaces for children is at school, and tonight we have more on the ongoing conversations about the return to classrooms in the fall. While the province's education minister says that's the plan, some people are questioning whether it's feasible. As Here and Now's Jeremy Eaton tells us, the concern is mostly coming from the union that speaks for teachers.
We are focusing, Mr. Speaker, on having a full return to class.
Minister of Education Brian Warr wants to see children back in their seats in the fall. This comes as welcome news for parent Tina Crane.
Super stressed out about where I was going to put my kids in September. My husband and I work full-time. We're out of the house. We have no way to take care of them at home. I have no option for daycare right now. If there's no kids in school, where is everybody going? My shoulders are a little bit higher right now.
There is no one in the province that wants our students and our schools to be back up running snore as much as our province teachers. But fundamentally, we need this to be done in a safe environment.
Fact or fiction, next one.
Scenes like this one might soon be a distant memory. That does not fall in with the province's plea for social distancing. The head of the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association has some reservations.
How do we ensure physical distancing with our class size numbers being what they are? When COVID first struck the province, we raised those very questions, which is why the right decision was to suspend our class at the time.
It'll be a big job to make sure there is enough space for students, teachers, and physical distancing. More space means spending more money.
If we're going to have the students return to class with smaller class size, there will be a necessity to have additional resources, including human resources, within the system.
Ingram says that means more than just hiring more teachers.
We know that students will have significant anxiety issues. We need a review of support services such as school counselors, school psychologists, IRT personnel. All those things will be critically important if our students have received the education they need and deserve in a post-COVID reality.
According to Ingram, a safer environment means smaller class sizes. The NLTA has been lobbying for years for a review of the teacher allocation formula. And with classrooms gearing up to welcome children back into the seats, the number of students in classrooms will become very important, something Ingram says needs to be dealt with before September. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Not too long ago, Paul Antle was considering running for the province's top job. Today, he's throwing his weight behind his pick for leader of the Liberal Party. Anthony joins us now to break it all down. Anthony.
Well, it's easy to forget, given all the news of the pandemic, that there are two men who want to occupy the 8th floor and the top job in the province and become premier, Andrew Furey and John Abbott. And as you mentioned, Carolyn, big surprise today, or at least a big shakeup in that leadership race, which really hasn't been grabbing a lot of attention. As you mentioned, here we have Paul Antle, a person who ran many times. We'll talk about that in a moment. But he has decided, despite his relationship with Andrew Furey, that he is going to side with John Abbott, and he released quite the video.
Now, Andrew Furey is a friend of mine, but I have to put friendship aside. He said recently that right now he's just an observer. He thinks he has an idea of what's going on, but he needs to see the books first before he has anything concrete to offer. What more information do you need to come up with a plan to deal with it? I take great comfort in having John Abbott ready to step in day one and not miss a beat. He eats budgets for breakfast. His decision to shut down Nalcor makes perfect sense. And John's position on Muskrat Falls is courageous and brilliant. Forcing the issue with Ottawa and refusing to turn on the power until we get a guarantee that our rates won't go up puts us in charge for a change.
So a very animated video. It's about 5 minutes long, and the Abbott people, of course, are very quick to bring this to everybody's attention today. How much weight Mr. Antle carries? You consider that he lost against Lorraine Michael, he lost the leadership as well, and he lost against Tess Crosby. Very successful in business, not so much in politics. How much weight, that remains to be seen. As for the Andrew Furey campaign, well, that candidate says he kind of saw this coming.
I'm quite happy to talk about my experience. The way I see it right now, Newfoundland and Labrador is facing three crises. The first is in the healthcare sector. I'm incredibly experienced on the front lines of the healthcare system of this province. The second one is economic. I've been involved in the business community in this province and sitting on multiple boards. I have an understanding of what the challenges and barriers they face to doing business here in the province. I've also attended a business school. With respect to the third crisis that we're facing, I think is a societal one, and it's one that we're slowly starting to learn more and more about the social gaps, the gaps in the social fiber, the safety net of our province. And I've given back to this province, whether through charitable work or given up my time or talent or funds on many different opportunities, and I think all of those speak to my experience right now.
So today's development leadership race, the Abbott team tactically pointing out and raising questions about whether Andrew Furey has enough experience at a time like this to lead. Another interesting point, George Furey, the Speaker of the Senate, he was actually Mr. Antle's campaign manager when he ran for the leadership. Now George Furey, of course, is backing his son. Carolyn?
Interesting tidbit there, Anthony. Thanks so much. Well, Central Health has come out swinging against a local radiologist who spoke out on Here and Now last night. The health authority says Dr. Jane Rendell has tried to discredit leadership at her department. Here and Now's Garrett Berry is live with us tonight. So, Garrett, what have we learned?
Carolyn, it's a long 1,000-word letter from Central Health CEO that certainly seems to not be pulling any punches, released just an hour and a half ago. You'll remember that last night we heard from Dr. Jane Rendell, who said she's been sidelined during the COVID-19 pandemic while the health authority is bringing in out-of-country doctors. Well, in a letter released at about 4:30 p.m. today, CEO Andre Robichaud laid the blame at the feet of that doctor. She wrote that Rendell declined a meeting where Central Health was prepared to talk about back-to-work contracts. The issue here between both sides dates back to a letter that Rendell signed last year. She told CBC that it was factual about patient care and mistakes made by other doctors in the department. And she said after the letter, her hospital credentials were threatened, so she went on leave. But Central Health says Dr. Rendell has been involved in a concerted effort to discredit the direction, functioning, and regionalization of the diagnostic imaging department at Central Health, culminating in a letter that she was a signatory to that made false and damaging accusations against coworkers in the organization. They wrote that an internal process started, and that's when Rendell withdrew her services. Both sides say they do want to continue with the mediation, and Central Health confirmed today that they are committed to having Rendell return to work. Carolyn, there is another part to this story, too, about those fly-in doctors. Well, earlier today, I spoke with a Central Health executive that said the organization is diligently following the rules laid out by the province's Chief Medical Officer of Health. Here's a look at that.
When they arrive in Gander and or St. John's, there's a screening process there too. So they're meticulously screened, and then when they arrive in our locations in Central Health, they undergo the mandatory 2-week quarantine period. So with self-isolation and self-monitoring. So we follow that very, very meticulously. If we stepped away from bringing locum coverage in, we would really be up the creek without a paddle in many of our instances of service delivery.
Ogle said there's no reason for the public to be concerned that these fly-in doctors are a health risk. Now, Carolyn, I have asked Dr. Rendell for her reaction to today's letter. We haven't heard back yet, but of course we are committed to following this story.
Thanks so much, Garrett. That's Here and Now's Garrett Berry, live in Gander. Well, now to Labrador, where the neighboring communities on either side of the Quebec border want to loosen up travel restrictions. They're asking the provincial government to allow non-essential travel between the communities. Western Labrador and Fremont, Quebec are just over 30 kilometers apart. Both communities have a variety of services, so before the pandemic started, people were often traveling back and forth. That access to services was cut off when the country went into lockdown. That's when police began to patrol and block the border. As you can see in these photos taken today, the RNC still maintains the border at the request of government, a move endorsed by the area's municipal leaders. However, they now want restrictions eased to allow travel between those communities only. The area's NDP MHA Jordan Brown says the issue was discussed with the Premier a few days ago.
Can do to create these possible exemptions to allow permanent residents of Fairmont to come over into Labrador West to do some non-essential shopping and services because as a community of Fairmont it's only about 2,000 residents, so they don't have a lot of the non-essential stuff because prior to this COVID stuff, the community of Fairmont and Labrador West was an integrated one real region spanning over a political border. So up until this point, it was not really, there was nothing there to stop individuals from coming back and forth as we were all one large community in an isolated region in the Labrador Trough.
Now, the Premier says he understands the issue and wants the community leaders to put together a proposal in writing that can be taken to public health officials for review.
Temperatures are going to continue to climb as we head through the next couple of days. We do have some rain in the forecast for some of us. I'll have all those details in your full forecast coming up.
Weather update is brought to you by the sold-out HCF Home Lottery. Thank you, Newfoundland and Labrador. Your support has been overwhelming. Prize winners will be announced on June 25th at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Time to check in with Ashley, and what a beautiful evening out there in St. John's down by the water.
It's taking a lot for me not to want to jump in the water today. An absolutely stunning afternoon. Yeah, a beautiful afternoon. Pretty much my perfect day for sure here in St. John's. Temperature reached so far today a high near 21 degrees in St. John's. Let's take a look at those numbers across the board. That marks 10 days of 20 or above temperatures in St. John's. And then hot spot across the province was actually in Terra Nova, 26 degrees. And then we've got temperatures nearing that 20 degrees and 18 degrees in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So pretty much nice everywhere. We do have a little bit of a cold front that's moving through. That's sparking some showers for the northern peninsula as well as southeastern Labrador. But otherwise tonight, as we head through the evening hours, it's looking pretty beautiful for most of us with just the chance of showers continuing and spreading towards the northeast coast. As we head into the overnight, then we'll see some periods of rain move in for Lab West and spread towards central Labrador as you head towards the early morning hours. Other than that, just partly to mostly cloudy skies tonight. A little bit chilly for northern areas of Labrador, but 1 degree is where you should sit in Nain. Otherwise, anywhere from 9 to 12 degrees will be the overnight low. Along the west coast, you'll note your winds will ease and then stay quite breezy for eastern areas, about 20 to 40 kilometer per hour winds expected as we head through the overnight tonight. Now that chance of showers will continue for the northern peninsula and southeastern Labrador as we head through most of the day tomorrow. Potential for some showers will move through pretty much from Corner Brook through to Bonavista as well in the second half of the day. And then we're looking at the potential for showers up through Labrador as well. Mainly into the morning and afternoon for you. But here's your temperatures tomorrow into the 20s again, with winds brisk though out of the southwest, 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. A little cooler in those onshore winds along the south coast, but still beautiful in the teens. And then St. Anthony, you'll be hovering around the 12 degree mark with that rain through the day. Now we do have a risk of some thunderstorms, slight risk in the western areas. Lab West, Churchill Falls, you may see a few or hear a few rumbles of thunder. Your winds will be brisk as well, 30 to 50 kilometers per hour, but temperatures into the 20s and then teens for the rest of the big land. And then as we head into Thursday, temperatures warming even more into the mid to high 20s for most of us. A little bit more unsettled though, with the potential for some showers. 22 degrees in Marystown, 21 again in Lab City. And that temperature dipping down to about 10 degrees for you in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Now we are looking at a little bit of a dip in those temperatures as we head into Saturday, down to the single digits, but then back up to round out the weekend, it looks like, with some sunshine and 15 degrees. And then as we head into central Newfoundland, you're looking at that dip in temperatures as well. Generally unsettled over the next couple of days with that potential for some showers. Same thing for western Newfoundland, but we're looking at temperatures in the teens with sunshine through the weekend. So as of now, shaping up to look like a nice weekend. For eastern Labrador, temperatures will dip and then back up into the 20s for the beginning of the weekend. And then for western Labrador, unsettled, and your temperatures into the 20s by Sunday. Just wanted to share this great shot of the Churchill River. Thank you to Vanita for sending that in. And if you have any weather photos to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Gorgeous. Thanks so much, Ashley. Well, bicycles have been having a bit of a heyday during the COVID pandemic. With more people getting behind the handlebars, local bike shops have been backed up. So CBCNL has teamed up with Ordinary Spokes, a community bike co-op in St. John's. Here are some tips for a tune-up you can do at home.
Hello, my name's Jake Nickel. I'm a musician.
Making friends is hard when I can't get past my yard.
I'm also with Ordinary Spokes, a community bike co-op in St. John's. I normally live in St. John's and record bands and make music and play shows, but this global pandemic has landed me in Ontario for the foreseeable future. Maybe you thought you would go on a nice country bike ride this spring, enjoy the sun, the air, get away from all the people and infectious diseases, get out for some exercise, only to realize that your bike has a flat tire. Well, I'm going to show you how to fix that today, even if you don't have any specialized tools. Instead, we'll use some of these. Spoons. You want some spoons that, first of all, aren't precious, aren't made of your grandma's finest silver, and then you also want some that aren't particularly sharp-edged. So you have a flat tire. Dang. The first thing you need to do is find out what size your tire is so that you can get the right size tube to go inside of it. On this bike, it's a 26 by 1.95 inch tube. For bikes with V-brakes, what you'll need to do first is disengage the brakes so that you can get your wheel off. So take the first spoon and using the concave side towards your tire, you want to try and pull out just one side of your tire, just one wall of the tire over top of the rim. You'll never be able to get both at once. It's impossible, so don't try. Start with just one wall, one spoon, wrenching it over, and hold it down. Then take your next spoon, just a few inches to either side, and do the same thing. Hook underneath one wall of the tire and pry it up. For tight tires, you might need to do this with a third spoon before you can start actually pushing one of the spoons along the edge of the rim, just sort of untucking the tire around the whole circumference. Once one wall of the tire is completely off, then you can get rid of your spoons, they've done their job, and it should be easy enough to take the second wall off with your hands only. Then all you have to do is pull out the tube from the tire. At this point, it's a good idea to inspect your tire to see if there's any reason why it went flat in the first place. It's also a good idea to take a look at the rim tape on your rim to make sure that it's covering up all of the spoke ends. Now's the time to grab your new tube and give it a little bit of air to give it some structure so that you'll have an easier time working with it. Put the semi-inflated tube into your tire and then align the nozzle with the nozzle hole on your rim. And that should do it. Now go off and explore the world.
Welcome back. Anthony has been at the House of Assembly today where the topic of pay increases for judges was debated, and he joins us once again. So Anthony, what happened there today?
Well, kind of interesting when you think about what COVID has done to our economy, Carolyn, and spending. We saw the nurses get a 4% increase, and now judges, different type of person in that the judges have their own separate category, not exactly public servants like the rest of them. But nonetheless, discussion of a raise. An independent tribunal came up with recommendations for 0, 0, 1.6, and the big number, 6% in the fourth year, retroactive to 2017. So the entire issue as to whether or not we can actually afford to give judges a raise, well, that came up today. Here's Justice Minister Andrew Parsons.
Because the judge in the 2018 case in Supreme Court made it very clear that that argument wouldn't be accepted. At that point, things were different. I mean, we're in the same fiscal state overall. I mean, it's not good, but since that time we have seen negotiations with different groups that are different. And again, we have to treat this differently. At that time, I think we were trying, when we were in negotiations, collective bargaining with different unions, it was zeros across the board. Since that time, we have seen changes. We have seen increases awarded to various groups. We've seen increases awarded to the RNC. And what I will say is that the case law on this from across the country says very clearly that you cannot just use the fiscal situation. If that's the case, you'll be seeking decreases. But again, going back, anybody who reads the 2018 case from Justice Fowler will point out that that argument will get tossed out extremely quickly.
But for those of us who aren't lawyers, people watching, how do you explain your government with 4% for nurses and now we're looking at 6%? For judges? I mean, we're broke, we're asking the federal government to help us borrow money, and we're spending like this? Like, how do you explain that?
Because it's not truly government spending per se. So as I just explained in the debate there, when it comes to judges, they are treated differently than every civil servant, including politicians, including, you name it, they're treated differently. They're a different pillar of government, which has been recognized by the Supreme Court of Canada. Every province, when it relates to judges, has a tribunal that makes these decisions on all the case law that's been put out there before. So it's not government recommending a raise. Government recommended 0% across the board. It's the tribunal, an independent tribunal.
The person signing the check is a taxpayer in Newfoundland and
Because
Labrador, right?
at the end of the day, if we don't do it, the judge is going to do it for us, and it's going to cost us more. So this is not where we have a say here. This is not a negotiation. This is absolutely not a negotiation.
So Andrew Parsons' point in all this is that, look, we don't want to spend, but if we try to fight this, we're actually going to end up paying more by the time this is all said and done. Ches Crosby, the leader of the opposition, also a lawyer himself, says he doesn't think so. He thinks judges could be reasonable given our current circumstances.
These are highly, highly, highly unusual circumstances. As I said in the House, the bottom has gone out of the boat. The arse is out of her, to use a Newfoundland Labrador expression. Everyone knows this. What we don't know is just how far out of it or how exactly out of it is, because the Minister of Finance won't tell us. But I think judges are reasonable people. They're aware of the economic circumstances, and they'll understand the decision, if the decision of the House is not to implement the tribunal recommendations for a raise.
So whether the judges get a raise or not, that was not decided today. The vote was put off until Thursday. And of course, we're in a minority situation. So for this to pass, the opposition, including all the independents, they all have to vote for this. And right now, that support's not there. Carolyn?
Thanks so much, Anthony. Well, the federal government made it official today. It will extend the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. But as David Cochran reports, there will be more conditions.
Over the past few months, Canadians have been able to count on the Canada Emergency Response Benefit.
That benefit has been a lifeline for more than 8 million Canadians, but for many it runs out next month, so an extension of 8 more weeks.
So if you've been getting the CERB and you still can't work because you're unable to find a job or it's just not possible, you will keep getting that $2,000 a month.
I feel relieved. I feel safer. I mean, I so grateful to live in Canada.
Asia Sachs works in a Toronto restaurant. Even as the hospitality sector inches back to normal, many workers still don't have a job to go back to or can't get enough hours to live without the CERB.
I will absolutely need that, and I'm by no means the only one. Even with restaurants slowly reopening, we're seeing very few people actually being hired back.
But while the checks won't change, the conditions will. When people sign up for the CERB, they will have to promise to look for work.
We are going to have stronger language in the attestation that encourages, even expects, workers to look for work, take work when it's reasonable for them to do so.
Emergency benefits weren't the only thing extended today, so was the emergency closure of the Canada-US border, sealed now to non-essential travel until at least late July. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
And as you heard David just say, the Canada-US border will stay closed to non-essential travel for now in an effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made the announcement during his daily briefing.
Can now confirm that Canada and the United States have once again agreed to extend by 30 days until July 21st the current measures in place along our border. This is an important decision that will keep people in both of our countries safe.
Canada and the U.S. reached an agreement in March to temporarily close the border, only allowing commercial traffic and essential workers to cross. It's been extended twice and was set to expire on Sunday. Last week, Ottawa announced some immediate family members separated by the restrictions will be allowed to travel back and forth. In international news, Donald Trump signed an executive order today following weeks of unrest sparked by George Floyd's death. But the U.S. president underscored his support for law enforcement even as he unveiled new measures on police reform.
Americans want law and order. They demand law and order. Some of them don't even know that's what they want, but that's what they want. And they understand that when you remove the police, you hurt those who have the least the most.
The order encourages the creation of a database which would track complaints of excessive use of force by officers. Trump says chokeholds would be banned, except if an officer's life is at risk. The president pushed back against demands to defund the police, calling it radical and dangerous. Democrats and his critics say the new measures don't significantly address the issue. Welcome back to Here and Now. Trying to keep on top of the latest COVID-19 situation can be a challenge. Almost every part of our lives has changed in some way, so we'd like to try to make it a little easier by answering some of your COVID-19 questions. Here and Now's Peter Cowan has been asking a lot of questions of his own at the provincial COVID-19 briefings, and he's here to answer some of your questions today. So Peter, our first question is from Tim Bounds. He says, I was wondering if you have heard anything about what's going on with the province's only public transport across the island, DRL. I do not drive like many people. They're an essential service and need to be running again for things like appointments, visiting family, and staycations. So what do you know about that situation?
It's a good question, because back when they stopped running in March, the Premier said they are an essential service, we're going to look at some alternatives, but since then we've heard nothing. They haven't put any sort of alternatives in place. So we reached out to DRL today to find out what is their plan, and I guess there is some good news for Tim and other people who rely on the service. They are planning to get back up and running as of Thursday. So that'll once again mean that there's cross-island bus service, but it will not look the same as it has always been. That seems to be a common theme. It doesn't matter what we're talking about.
That's right, going to the grocery store.
Nothing is normal. And so it's going to be half capacity, so they'll only be able to have 28 people on a bus. That's designed to try and increase physical distancing. And we've heard from Dr. Janice Fitzgerald that public transport, she really would like to see people wearing a mask. Why is that? It's because even though every other seat may be empty, you're still not going to be more than 2 meters away from everyone the whole time. So especially because you may be spending hours and hours and hours sitting near other people. If everyone's wearing a mask, it reduces the risk that if someone is sick, that they could then end up spreading the virus.
Not a requirement, but a recommendation.
Right, and so yeah, she would like to see people wearing them. There are benefits to everyone's health for wearing them. So that's the good news situation with DRL.
Okay, well, let's get to another question. Yesterday, of course, the education minister said the plan is for students to be back in class by September. So Jen Foley asks, how does the Department of Education plan to ensure proper hand washing and physical distancing in schools this fall?
It's going to be a challenge, especially small children who are putting everything in their mouth and trying. So what we can kind of do is we can take a look at what has happened elsewhere, because there are some places in the world where classes have resumed. So for example, in Denmark, they have hand washing stations that exist outside the school. So as soon as kids arrive, they have to wash their hands. We're seeing a lot of places saying kids will only remain in their classrooms. They won't be allowed out into sort of public areas. They'll eat at their desks. We're also going to see desks physically distant. So they're going to be spaced apart, which will allow some of that physical distancing. But they're still working on these guidelines. How will it look in Newfoundland and Labrador come this fall? That is still to be determined. You know, we've seen places like New Brunswick have announced their plans. So within the next couple of weeks, we're going to see. And there have been some parents I've already seen who've said, you know what? No matter what, I'm not going to send my kids back to school. But the flip side, I know there are lots of other parents who are really looking forward to the time that their kids can get back to some sense of normalcy, you know, seeing their friends again, even if it is physically distant.
Right, okay. Well, let's talk now about essential workers. The Premier announced a program to thank people who have continued to work through the pandemic. And Judy Galway says, I want to know if Walmart employees who worked during the entire lockdown are qualified for the money announced yesterday. So will they get the money?
Yeah, this money is going to go to tens of thousands of people. So lots of people have been asking questions like, am I going to qualify? So the first thing to know is this is designed to be people who are kind of essential workers, but it's a very broad definition of essential workers. So that includes grocery stores. If you install, you know, phone lines or new cable connections with one of the telecommunications companies, you're an essential worker. Even news media are considered essential workers. But the key thing here is there is a cap. If you earn more than $3,000 a month as your gross, so that's not your paycheck, that's before they take out the taxes, then you will qualify. This works out to just less than $20 an hour, usually for most people. So a lot of people at Walmart absolutely will qualify. We've already seen concerns, though, from some of the health unions that even like personal care attendants who are unionized, so paid a little better, they're not going to qualify because they make too much money.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, next week we'll find out when the province will move to alert level 2. I think that announcement's coming on Wednesday, so that will be a huge change. We'll see things like bars, churches, pools, playgrounds, and gyms will start to reopen with restrictions, of course. But looking further down the road, some people are wondering, what will level 1 look like? What will be open and what will still have to be closed then?
The idea with level 1 is everything will be opened, but again, it's the new normal. It's not back to the way things were. The idea has been they want to try and live with the disease, so being able to do your daily activities, be able to still, go to a bar, be able to, have everything open, but still trying to maintain some of those physical distance requirements. So Dr. Janice Fitzgerald actually addressed this at yesterday's briefing. Here's what she had to say.
Alert level 1 really is life, living with COVID, finding a way to live with COVID before we get a vaccine, right? So we can't really leave alert level 1 until we get a vaccine, and there's good uptake of that vaccine by the general public so that we have some good herd immunity, so to speak. But it's, so I think we will still see many of the public health measures still in place, such as, physical distancing, hand washing, all of those things that we've been talking about up to now, trying to keep your contacts as, your close contacts as low as possible, people outside of your bubble, trying to keep that, those interactions as infrequent and as short as possible. We expect that this virus will circulate in our communities again, and we have to be prepared. We don't want to have to go backwards. We want to learn how to be able to live with this virus.
We don't know when we might move to alert level 1 yet, but it could be a couple of weeks away when you look at the fact that alert level 2 could be next week if everything goes well. Right. And if we continue to see no cases, a few weeks after that, they could be ready to move down to alert level 1. So there's a bit of sunshine on the horizon at least.
For sure, as well as in the sky lately. Well, thank you so much, Peter. And I know that there are still so many questions about how life is changing. And Peter, I know you'll be asking your own questions tomorrow during the COVID-19 government briefing. And we plan to do a segment like this every week. So if you have any questions, please send them along to us. You can email us at hereandnow.nl@cbc.ca or go to Facebook and Twitter at CBCNL.
being a big guy or having facial hair, it's just hair. Like, it just grows. There's no reflection of the person you are based on your facial hair.
Someone said it's the beard that's on the inside that counts.
It's about just showing people as people, put on a tail, like now you're a merbai.
It's not just about men in tails, it's about pretty much anybody in tails, and that's kind of the beauty of mervais.
I want people in different ways to see men being depicted in ways that they're not used to seeing them.
There will be some people who are maybe challenged by what they're seeing. But first and foremost, we're all gorgeous.
Welcome back to Here and Now. Former Governor General Michaëlle Jean is calling for a national conversation about long-term care in this country. She says the pandemic exposed problems in the system that have existed for far too long. Michaëlle Jean herself lost 4 family members to COVID-19. She spoke with Power and Politics host Vashi Kapelos earlier today.
It's about our responsibility really to make sure that people are not exposed, to neglect, to protect people who are in danger when we don't look carefully. We don't have, policies in place really of surveillance, of really close, looking closely at what is happening in the centers. If we don't do that, we can see the consequences. We can see how devastating it can become, in a time of pandemic. But the situation was there, and nobody really addressed it properly. So I think it's this discussion must happen. It took a pandemic to see, the truth. It's a moment of truth.
Well, from someone who once represented the Queen to the Queen's family itself, some royals resumed public engagements today to mark their first public outing since March. Prince Charles and Camilla paid a visit to hospital workers.
It's been a marvellous opportunity just to have a chance of seeing people who I know have been doing so much literally on the front line, and having to endure an awful lot of stress and strain, I think, in their wonderful way. How they do it, I don't know.
The couple obeyed physical distancing rules as they met with medical staff at Gloucester Royal Hospital. The 71-year-old prince recovered from a mild case of COVID-19 in March. Prince William, meantime, visited paramedics to thank them for their response to the pandemic. Well, if you're sick of baking banana bread, maybe it's time to switch to a more traditional treat. Laurie McCarthy's company Cod Sounds is all about sharing our culture through food. As part of an ongoing series, Laurie has opened up her kitchen, and tonight she's talking about tea buns.
I think tea buns are one of the most quintessential Newfoundland treat. I'd like to be sitting around now eating more tea buns with the ones that we love right now. So maybe you can stockpile them, start making them, freeze them. They freeze really well. There's a bunch of recipes out there for tea buns. I think we all like to think that our moms or our nans invented them all. So I think the truth is that they all came from somewhere else, or like the back of the baking powder box back 50 years ago. Have a look on Newfoundland, on the Newfoundland Labrador Heritage website. They've got a great recipe there. I think it's called like Aunt Hilda's Tea Buns, and it was done by a group of kids at Mount Pearl High School back in the late 90s, I think. Anyway, they listed a bunch of recipes there. Super fun. So, and right now actually, they are looking for people to jump on their site and start documenting what we're making now. So just so that'll be part of history in times to come. You can see that this is just turned into this crumbly kind of batter here. Not batter, but mixture. And so what you want to do is just work all the butter in. You know, Mom always said, make the well in the middle. In goes your milk and your egg, and you can't overwork these, right? Because they will be tough. This is also a great recipe for making it like savory. So you can actually put a pinch of savory in there. You can leave the sugar out and put in cheese if you wanted, grated cheddar cheese. Throw a bit of ham or a bit of bacon or anything in there, and that'll make it like a nice savory breakfast scone. Gentle, Mom always said, it's patting and not kneading, and so you can see how quick that came together. I always remember making these with Mom when I was young, and the kids still make them with me. Quick thing to put together to feed a crowd with. I don't know about your house, but it always happens to be extra crowd showing up around supper time at the house. Not so much anymore, so I actually can't wait to get back to that time when the house is full of people to feed. I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. So yeah, it'd be fun to hear about what you guys are baking and cooking at this time. So when you're baking, snap picture, send it along. Send to CBC. I'm sure they'd love to post some pictures up of what you guys are making and baking. Now, Mother always liked to touch brown on the top. So, a little drop of milk, or you could do like a milk and egg wash, would be fine too. But actually, milk is pretty sweet, so it does give a nice brown on the top. So there's the tea buns, and they go in the oven 400. I do 20 minutes. You want them a bit browner, leave them a bit longer. The good old TV swap out. Ta-da! Now, Mom would say they're not dark enough. I like them lighter like this, but that's a total preference. You can leave them in for, 10 minutes longer if you want. I find 400 gives it that really nice quick rise. So there's 4 teaspoons of baking powder in it. But again, I got the recipe up for you, so you won't need to worry about it. You can always email me, Lori@godsounds.ca, and reach out to the folks at CBC. Tell them what you want to hear about. Tell them what you're cooking. Let me know what you're making out there. So yeah, good times. Thanks, everyone.
Well, that looks delicious. A bit of rhubarb jam and some cream wouldn't go astray with those tea buns, that's for sure. Well, thank you for spending some time with us this evening. You can find all the latest news online at cbc.ca/NL. Hope you can join us again tomorrow. And tomorrow I'll actually be speaking with a local photographer, Michael Windsor, about his new book. He'll have some suggestions for wonderful places to explore within the province if you're looking for spots to go for your staycation. We'll leave you tonight with a beautiful shot of St. John's Harbour. Just have a look at this. A gorgeous evening. Do you know it is still about 22 degrees in St. John's tonight, and we're in for a beautiful few days. Wednesday, Thursday looking quite nice as well. Cooling down on Friday, but we'll enjoy the sunshine while we have it. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great night.